we're talking about our course introduction here. And in that course introduction, we are going to be looking primarily at just some kind of fundamental definitions of the science of chemistry, as well as a look at some of the governmental agencies that exist with the sole purpose of protecting workers, employees, people, the environment, and keeping other kinds of things safe. So we're going to look at a little bit at government agencies before we get into our placarding systems, which will be the primary focus of Friday's lecture. So when it comes to chemistry, we can break chemistry into two primary branches, two groups. There is the organic chemistry. These are the substances that contain carbon. And there is the inorganic chemistry, the substances that do not contain carbon. Now, the differences between these two are substantial. Organic chemistry, carbon-based chemistry, gets into most of the things that govern our life. So we get a lot of life-based chemistry here. We get a lot of chemistry that affects industry here. Most of the things like oil, like certain kinds of petroleum products, those are organic products. Most of the fuels industry is organic chemistry. In inorganic chemistry, the substances that do not contain carbon, these are mostly our minerals, our rocks, our soils. So those of you that have an agricultural kind of bend or working on a farm, a lot of the things that you look at as far as making your farm, increasing your yield, those are inorganic kinds of things because you're looking at nitrogen content in the soil, phosphorus content, sulfur content. Is the soil too wet? Is it too sandy? And those are all inorganic kinds of questions. So we tend to have two very different kinds of perspectives here. Now, moving on to some governmental agencies and some other kinds of things. The first thing that we want to look at is something called the Federal Hazardous Substances Act, the CPSC. This is a really important act in terms of overall safety and security because it was one of the first things enacted by our government to require manufacturers to label their products. Not just label them, not just put tags on them, but to label them in a manner that was systematic and proper. So what this included? A common labeling system. So every manufacturer had to use the same kinds of terms, the same kinds of labels. Use of common or chemical names. So if you are using something that contains water, it's either going to say water in it or it's going to say it's chemical name dihydrogen monoxide. And the same is true for other things, methylene chloride or dimethyl chloride, 1,2-dichloroethene. Also signal words. So if something is flammable, marking it as so. If something evaporates easily, marking it as volatile. If something is explosive, if something poses a general danger to the health or safety of the public, putting words like danger or warning to signal that there is something about this product that needs special caution. And the Federal Substances Act also started the use of bans. So One of the first things that we looked at was, can we ban the use of certain substances in household products? So can we take the lead out of paint? That's one of the first big things that the act did. Nowadays, looking at things like, can we take formaldehyde out of fiberglass insulation? That's been enacted. It's been in law for a couple of decades now. But we see that problem coming in from time to time when goods are imported from other countries. So the Hazardous Substances Act began this process of labeling to enable public safety kinds of protocols. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Act. This one is driven primarily at employees. So in the workplace, you have protections from occupational illnesses, from injuries, from anything that might be detrimental to your life or health based on the exposure to hazardous substances. And that's what OSHA primarily covers. Now, under this umbrella, there is quite a bit that is covered. But from a hazardous substances standpoint, what OSHA really is getting after is putting limitations in some kind of way on your exposure to certain kinds of agents that could cause some health effects in the negative kind of sense, whether it be just something that causes you to be sick or causes physical impairment, or even in most extreme circumstances could cause you to become seriously ill or die. OSHA covers all of those things and sets limits on employers to what those exposures could be. And it does so using regulations. Regulations in place there are to help ensure that your employer is providing a safe, healthful working environment. How do they do this? They do this in a couple of ways. Again, we see the use of warning labels here. We also see the use of what are called material safety data sheets, MSDSs, or their more modern counterparts, the safety data sheets, SDSs. So warning labels, these can come in the forms of the NFPA Diamond, DOT placards, or the Global Harmonized System placards, and pictograms. So all of those are possibilities for what would constitute a warning label. And so we're going to stop there for today because we're pretty much out of time. When we pick up on Friday, Friday is going to be a little bit less disjointed, a little bit more smooth. We're going to do more content and material. But we'll get more into some of the other governmental agencies, and then we'll actually talk about what these warning labels, what these safety data sheets, what these pictograms look like.